The Act Against Hate Alliance is an organization dedicated to putting a dent in the number of hate crimes in California. Those numbers, according to State Attorney General Rob Bonta, are unacceptable. Hate crimes are up in every California city and in nearly every community. Thousands have taken place in just the past 2 years. They are at their highest point since the 9/11 terrorist attacks. The Act Against Hate Alliance is focused on solutions. Part of that solution is law enforcement. Denton Carlson is the chief of police in the Northern California city of San Ramon. He had his department take quick action last December when a young American couple of Korean descent were threatened inside of a fast food restaurant. According to Carlson, San Ramon is a tolerant community. The state of California, he says, is full of tolerant people, but that tolerance can only go so far.
If you tolerate it, you encourage it. And I really think that in this situation, that is entirely a critical component in why we've seen the rise in it. It's become on social media. I mean, you go in and you scroll through a Twitter feed and you're going to see things that and read things that you never thought you would have read 10 years ago. And I think it's that prevalence of these things are being tolerated.
Chief Carlson found support from former Los Angeles County Sheriff and Long Beach Police Chief Jim McDonnell. The former sheriff is now the director of the Safe Communities Institute at USC's Price School of Public Policy. Tolerance is not the answer, according to McDonnell. Something else is.
The term tolerance is used quite a bit. And to me, I've always been kind of bothered by that. The tolerance is putting up with somebody or a group of people. To me, it should be respect. We should move from any kind of talk of tolerance to respect for everybody in our communities.
There are other statewide law enforcement leaders who believe that the answer to reducing the numbers of hate crimes is to take a closer look at the people, men and women, who are committing these acts. Many of them have something in common other than hate. This, according to Walt Allen, the former director of the California Youth Authority and now the head of the Rio Hondo Police Academy.
One of the issues that I feel that we need to deal with, and this I'm speaking as a elected official locally, is the issue of mental health. I think that is a major driver of some of the major incidents that we've had in California regarding violent crime.
The first step to catching those responsible for committing hate crimes is for the victim to report them and ask for help. But that doesn't always happen. Brian T. Gilhooly is a former Navy SEAL who now leads the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Los Angeles office in the Special Investigations Division.
I believe, and I think this is shared by many of my peers, is that many hate crimes go unreported. Most people set the bar relatively high with reaching out to law enforcement and thinking that they might need to actually have some physical violence. Harassment and other forms of hate crimes should also be reported to law enforcement. That way we can better understand what's going on in the community and target our investigations to focus on the worst offenders.
Reporting a crime of hate is often the first step in what can be a long process. Other law enforcement leaders say the next step in that process must be a full investigation to determine what exactly took place. This point is emphasized by Domingo Huraz. He serves as the director of programs with the International Association of Chiefs of Police.
Because the challenge we face is if the investigation falls apart, there will be no prosecution. If there's no prosecution, no charges, then what do we have on the long-term, long-lasting effects and the devastation to the community?
The roundtable meeting of law enforcement leaders in California focused on several solutions, but all agreed that the people who commit these crimes must be caught and held responsible for what they have done. The core mission of the Act Against Hate Alliance is to identify the root causes behind hate crimes and propose solutions to stop them. The organization was co-founded by former California State Senate Minority Leader Bob Huff and May Ho Huff. This effort is made possible through funding from the California State Library Stop the Hate Initiative.
Good morning, everybody. I'm former State Senator Bob Huff, and I am today's program's MC. You just watched some highlights of last month's program compiled by Bill Bird, our communications director, with video editing provided by Ronnie Chung, our technical director. Our theme last month, as you may recall, was related to law enforcement's role in reducing hate crime. Today's briefing is the 7th in a series of monthly media briefings hosted by Act Against Hate Alliance. Today is also International Women's Day, and our lineup of speakers includes amazing women who have made an international impact. I'd like to turn the microphone over now to my most amazing international woman, my wife, May, for her opening remarks.
Thank you, Bob. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for participating in today's briefing and for your support. Act Against Hate Alliance was founded in 2022 to focus on finding and implementing solutions to reduce hate crimes. Today's lineup of presenters represents different disciplines within the broader category of the arts and entertainment industry, which has the power to influence culture and promote social change. This topic was partially chosen because the Oscars will be center stage in just 4 days. Oscars are awards for artistic and technical merit for American film industry and are regarded by many, if not most people, as the highest recognition given in the film industry. We all know that popular movie stars have influence on subjects way outside their areas of expertise. But even the film industry is so much more than just familiar faces on the silver screen. There is a choice of subjects covered, the way issues are handled in the scripts, the ethnicity and actors and actresses that are cast for the roles, the compensation formulas, who is hired on the sets, and so forth. Arts and entertainment is a much broader subject matter than just the film industry. To that point, today we have assembled representatives of television, theater, and modern art, who will share their thoughts on how their areas of expertise within the arts and entertainment industry can play a leadership role to help reduce the growing plague in our society called hate. Bob, back to you.
Thank you, May. To your point of the outsized impact that movie stars can make, I'd like to draw everyone's attention to the video published 2 days ago by former governor and superstar Arnold Schwarzenegger, where he denounced hate in any fashion, drawing upon his father's experience as a Nazi and his own life experiences and conclusions. This video has gone viral, and we thank Governor Schwarzenegger for weighing in on this important issue. We posted this video link on our website, incidentally, actagainsthate.org, or at least a link on our website. We're pleased all of you can join us today to hear the comments from our panel of leaders within the arts and entertainment industry. To our media friends, please log your name, organization, and email address in the chat so we can send you follow-up material related to this meeting. You can post any questions you have in the chat, and time permitting, we'll pose them to our panelists. Please address any chat you post to everyone and not specifically to me or May. We are honored also to have Carrie Perloff joining us today. Carrie has been one of the leading voices in the international arts and theater scene for more than 4 decades, a globally renowned director, playwright, educator, speaker, and author. She received her education from Stanford and Oxford University, and then became the artistic director of CSC Repertory in New York from 1988 to 1992. The youngest person ever chosen to lead an elite residential theater, Carrie was the director of the American Conservatory Theater, which I will call ACT, in San Francisco for 26 years from 1992 to 2018, having been recruited to rebuild the earthquake-destroyed theater and to completely reimagine the future of ACT, both of which she accomplished to worldwide acclaim. Her exploration of themes of equity, diversity, and inclusion have been central in her directing, writing, and programming, and she has created countless opportunities for new voices and emerging talents to be heard, including many international women playwrights, actors, and directors to have their work featured. Her recent book on directing the plays of Tom Stoppard and Harold Pinter have been well received internationally, and she has written over 10 plays and directed some of Hollywood's biggest stars. Her recent venture, called Tiny Theatricals, makes the intimacy of the rehearsal process accessible to all. Through Carrie's work, she is truly connected to every facet of the arts. Carrie, we're so pleased you're able to rearrange your schedule and join us today. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Maymay and Bob and all of you. It's such an honor to be here. This is an incredibly important moment for this organization. I grew up, my mother's a Viennese refugee, so I sort of grew up as the child of a Holocaust escapee. And so I think my antennae have always been out, and that question of when do you know that things are heating up? When do you know it's too late? When do you know you have to resist? Is a really complex one. And maybe it's what drove me to the theater to begin with, because I feel for me, the gift of having been made a career in the theater is that when you see a play and it's live and you are experiencing a human journey in real time with real people in the same zone, not on a little phone, not on your screen, but in real time, there is a kind of empathy and eye-opening sort of imaginative moment that can happen that I think is really life-changing. So I want to start by talking about arts education. I think one way that we as Californians can fight against hate is to support and nurture and encourage children to be educated in the arts and to have opportunities to make art and experience art. And I'll tell you why I say this. I don't think it's a luxury. I don't think art is something that you do when you've done your other subjects. What we have learned through many, many studies, through the RAND Corporation, et cetera, is that the experience of making art, of triggering your own imagination, of trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes, reduces truancy, it increases literacy, it creates team building, it completely reshapes how a child feels that he or she is part of a community. And one of the things we know about hate is another way to talk about hate it is what happens when you other someone, right? When somebody does something violent to someone else because of who they are, because they are Jewish or Asian or disabled or whatever, that othering allows someone in their mind to think that the person that they're harming isn't like them. And that's an awful thing. And one way to crack that open, I feel, is the experience of the arts, whether you're reading a great novel that you lose yourself in, or for me, making theater, because you can't distance yourself that way, right? You experience humanity on stage, and very often you experience people who are very different from yourself. You know, I always give the most extreme example. Let's say you're watching Medea. Let us hope that none of us has ever wanted to kill our children. But something we do know about in contemporary culture is the kind of plague of postpartum depression that has hounded women, particularly women who have other kinds of mental health issues or poverty or et cetera. To see a play like Medea and understand what happens to a woman who is driven to that extreme because she feels she has no options is one of the most extraordinary experiences you can have as a human being. You understand, it's what the Greeks called catharsis, but you understand what it is to be driven to that point, and you're aware of what you need to do to protect other people from having to undergo that. So my whole career, I've been deeply involved in arts education. At ACT, we had Downtown Community High School embedded in our theater. And that was a community high school of kids who had never made it in any other school setting. Nobody wanted to teach them. They were kind of, you know, left out in the cold. And we taught them, their high school was through making theater. And I wish each of you could have heard the monologues they wrote and what it was for them to perform those monologues in front of each other, to hear people laugh and cry and empathize and realize they do have a voice. They do have something to say. They are important parts of the community, and that other people could empathize with them. I was just in Washington, D.C. doing a new one-woman show by a Palestinian actress who grew up in Haifa. Her first language was Arabic, her second was Hebrew, her third is English. And the journey of her life in a part of the world that we are now seeing enormous upheaval in. And again, the amount of polarization and hate that is going on in Israel and outside Israel. This piece was a way for me of working with a great artist to just crack open those questions. Again, what I think is so powerful about making art is it's not didactic. It doesn't point the finger. It doesn't tell you in the audience that you're wrong or that you're a bad person or that you're stupid. It says, go on this ride with me. Experience this person's life with us. Laugh with her, cry with her, go on the journey and see what you make of it when you come out the other end. As Bob said, I've spent much of my career working with the playwrights Harold Pinter and Tom Stoppard, and I will just finish by saying this. As a Jew, this is a really frightening moment in the world. The rise of anti-Semitism is virulent and visible. And one of the things we're finding about hate is when one kind of hate, when anti-Asian hate rises, anti-Semitism rises, when anti-Black violence happens, anti-Asian violence, it seems to go in waves. We're kind of all together in this. And so I wrote a book in which the second chapter was about Stoppard and Pinter's Jewish background, because what I came to understand is even though many people thought their plays are kind of abstract or oblique or fantastical or whatever, both of these men suffered unbelievable trauma as Jewish children in the Second World War, having their whole backgrounds taken away from them. And in the case of Stoppard, fleeing as a refugee and then being raised in Britain, being told, don't ever say again that you were Jewish. So his plays are infused with secrets and masking and fear of exposure. For Pinter, he lived through the Blitz as a Jewish child, that then experiencing incredible anti-Semitism. So that knock at the door that happens in Pinter all the time is not abstract. It is the thing you have to be alert to, that somebody, is coming to get you. And I think for me as an artist to have collaborated with them has been so rich, because I think personally, I really understand that on the one hand, in this moment in culture for all of us, our antennae have to be out. And on the other hand, our hearts have to be out. So the last thing I want to say is about women, because this is International Women's Day. I started something called the Women's Leadership Project with Wellesley Centers for Women to try and find a way for more women to lead American theaters. When I started, I was really young, and it was such a belittling time for women, right? Where we were always patted on the head and told we couldn't read a balance sheet and we couldn't do this and that. And we always felt somehow that we weren't good enough. And I would like to dedicate this day for myself to my great mentor, Olympia Dukakis, who was my muse for 30 years. And when I would call her in despair and say, Olympia, they don't trust me and they don't believe me and they treat me like shit, she would yell into the phone, Carrie, it's the patriarchy. It's 2,500 years of violence against women. It's not going to change tomorrow. But she also made me believe that we could support other women, that we could do it together, that our voices did matter. So looking at all of you is incredibly inspiring to me, that you're here fighting the great fight. You're doing really important work in every aspect of the industry. I know together we can create an atmosphere through our work in which respect for everybody will really matter. So I'm going to hand it back to you.
Carrie, thank you so much. And because you may have to slip off early, I want to target at least one comment and then a question to you. And if anybody else has a question, pose it up in the chat and we'll try to get to that. And I apologize to our other presenters, but we were so fortunate to get Carrie here today, and she does have to.
I know rehearsal is ridiculous.
So, not to date myself or anything, but I saw The King and I on Broadway, and it's one of my favorite shows for a lot of different reasons. But, there was a song in there, whenever I am afraid, I hold my head erect and whistle a happy tune so no one will suspect I'm afraid. When I even sing that, I find myself happier at the end of that. And to your point of dealing with youth, giving them positive role models is important. Giving them the ability to step into the shoes of somebody else is important. To see life through somebody else's experiences, it's all important. And, sometimes there's a lot of different causal factors for hate and the expression of it. But part of it is just being afraid. You're afraid of somebody else, so you vilify them and try to tear them down. So that's what triggered that little ancient memory and holding my head erect and
I
whistling.
think
a happy
that's
tune.
true. And I also think what we've learned, if you want to think about something like The King and I, is that over time, we're also acutely aware that to tell stories about specific cultures, the people from that culture need to be, you know, we say in the theater, not about me, without me. So representation really matters, and having people tell the stories of their own communities really matters. It doesn't mean that you don't, that, you know, like as a woman, I can't tell a story that has a male protagonist, but I think what we're learning is that there are multiple stories in the world, and that so many people who never got a chance to tell their stories are ready and aching, and that those are stories that we have to now foreground and listen to. And then I think we're less fearful, because things that are unfamiliar are less strange. The more diversity we hear, the more the richer our palette is.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit and ask a question, though. So how should we deal with classic works that are filled with hateful, derisive language, such as The Merchant of Venice?
You know, it's a great question. And I just directed The Merchant of Venice, and I am about to direct the first American production of the Lehman trilogy in Boston. So these issues of what do you do when tropes of anti-Semitism are thrown up there is very present to me. I decided to do Merchant of Venice because I actually felt that Shakespeare is such a great writer that the questions are incredibly complex. And if I could make the world of the play, one of the things about Merchant of Venice that is very clear is that the people who hound Shylock into silence are as hateful and biased and cruel as Shylock becomes. And one of the things the play is about is when you treat somebody like an animal, they start to behave like an animal. You know, that's a very frightening thing. So with classic plays, they're not always going to be from the point of view that we're from, but I would just caution us to think that we're so enlightened and so ahead of the pack. We never are so enlightened. Things come back round and round and round again. And with a great play, if you feel there's enough depth and complexity to really explore, I urge people to continue to work on even problematic works of the past, as Taming of the Shrew is a very problematic work for women, but it's also a great role for a woman. And you have to be able to ask the real questions. You have to dare to ask it. I cast a woman as Shylock, a Jewish woman. That was really interesting. Did I solve the play? I don't think so, but I foregrounded questions that I felt were really valuable. And I think that's what theater can do, rather than silencing a classic and just saying it's bad.
Well, and
then you don't learn anything.
Yeah, and as often said, if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat the mistakes. And
look at what we're dealing with now with our own history, which we erase. We have to know even the ugly parts.
Right. Thank you so much for your comments. If you can stick around, please do. We will likely have some other questions. Appreciate your comments. So our next presenter is Faith Bautista, founder and CEO of the first Asian-owned television network, Chime TV. She currently serves as president and CEO of the National Diversity Coalition, an organization of community organizers, faith-based leaders, nonprofit directors, and business owners advocating for the voiceless and working collectively for greater financial equality and empowerment for underserved groups. Faith advocates in the halls of Congress, in the California legislature, where I met her, and in front of key federal agencies, as well as among America's Fortune 500 corporations. Faith has gained the support of corporate America in reaching out to minority groups and has been a leading advocate for low-income and underserved communities. Because of her leadership in this important area, Faith sits on numerous corporate advisory boards, including T-Mobile, Pacific Gas and Electric, and Charter Communications. Faith, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome.
Thank you. This is so nice. I love the partnership of May and Bob. Can you imagine you're married, you live together, you sleep together, and you still work together? So I salute you guys, and you've been doing a fantastic job. And thank you for the Stop the Hate initiative, and you were able to put this together. We need to do a lot more of this. We need to increase the grants, because it's about education. And happy International Women's Day. I mean, I just love, really admire what Carrie is saying. and all of us women, unfortunately, among all the women, among minority women, AAPI women report experiencing racism and or discrimination over the past 12 months. 3 out of 4, 74%. So today, I mean, stop me because I get so passionate talking about empowering all of us, the Asian. And as Bobby's saying, you know, I've been a community leader, oh my gosh, over 2 decades. So I've been around the block many, many times, and you've seen the success, the discrimination, the programs, but here it is now, right? During COVID, after COVID, the racism that happened is a lot more than what we've experienced. I experienced it myself, and I never thought no one will treat me this way because I'm proud of what I've accomplished. But when I was told, waiting for my bagel to come and doing my arm stretching, and someone told me, "You don't do that in America." I said, "What? Arm stretching? You don't do that in America?" "No, you don't do that in America. You go back to China." Well, you all know that I don't like Chinese, maybe is, but we're all labeled as Asian, and they don't realize that there's 54 countries or more, right? I mean, just the sub-ethnic group of Asian. And I always often say that, all of us are really different. And the only thing that binds us together is we all eat rice. But how do we empower us? I've been advocating for Black and Brown, but lately I'm seeing the D&I doesn't include Asian. I know some corporation, and I'm not going to mention it because this is recorded, that they're focusing on Black and Brown, African American, and Latino. Asian, they don't have the initiative yet. But if you look at the buying power per person, the Asian or the Black is 33,000 per person. Latinx is 31,000 per person. Asian is 58,000 per person. And we're the highest or fastest growing minority groups. But yet, it's not equitable. There's no equity there among Asian. And this is where Act Against Hate Alliance, National Diversity Coalition, and all thousands of nonprofit organizations should now all be together as Asian to showcase our excellence, to showcase the beauty of our culture. And this is how I started Chime TV. So I'm pleased to say that after 12 months, Charter Communication gave us a select package, which is 10.5 million households in 41 states. I happen to be sitting on so many tables, such as sitting on the advisory board, National Advisory Board for Charter. And I ask, and sometimes you just have to ask and you shall receive. So when I say we need to have a platform for Asian. So this television called Chime is creating history in media entertainment. That's what Chime is all about. All volunteers. As a nonprofit leader, I gathered everybody. I think I have some very important family of Chime here. I got Debbie Lee Ruiz, who's overseeing the Owning a Piece of America show that I'm hosting. Jinky Dollar, who is heading our ad sales. So 12 months later, I would say this is a miracle from zero funding. And, we self-funded this, me and my husband. And so we launched January 22 at the Japanese American National Museum. The capacity is only 350. We had like 550 people, the typical Asian, right? I mean, we just like the whole tribe, in Tagalog, the whole barangay are all in there to show the beauty of Asian. And then what's so nice, guys, is in one roof, we saw all the sub-ethnic group, from Korean, Indian, Chinese, Japanese, the Pacific Islanders. So now with the administration, they call now it's AANHPI, right? We always call it AAPI because it's Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander. And the Pacific Islander, the Samoan, the Hmong, they have the least, actually, when they say home ownership in African American is very low. They don't realize that the sub-ethnic group of Asian is as low as Black home ownership. So what do we do about it? With this Chime TV, my mindset is nonprofit. I mean, when you're doing it for more than 20 years and all of a sudden you're running a network, and when you're doing glory for the God, and I think this is what about, the beauty of women. All of us are beautiful, but really what the beauty of women is what's inside you and what can you do to your fellow women, not just your fellow women Asian, but also to everybody. So men, please respect us more, encourage us more. And I think, the pay should be the same. And I'm the very first Asian woman-owned channel. It's now actually 1% Asian representation. So I think, for the group that we're doing here, for the initiative that we're doing, I really encourage to have more research. The Pew Research, they only had a research on Asian when there's a massacre in Atlanta. That's the only time they started the research. How will they know who we are if there's no study, if there's no research? How can we do more of the outreach? How can we do more of education the way this Against Hate Alliance is doing if there's not enough funding? I salute, I commend. I mean, yes, I will always do, but we need more. And I'm really encouraging that if you're talking about D&I, if you're talking about people of color, our National Diversity Coalition co-chair always says that even white is a color. So it would be nice if sometimes merit is included rather than sometimes race, but how do you balance that? If you have not read the book, the Inconvenient Minority, right? It's because, we're not accepted at Harvard, we're not accepted at Yale, we're not accepted in UC, because there's too much of us. And do we punish those that spend thousands of hours to study to get an average of 3.5 or 4.0? They will not be accepted because they're Asian. I really have a problem with that. And I like everyone to be accepted. I like everyone to be given the same same level of equality. But don't punish those people that are working so hard and just because they're Asian. So I believe together we can do this. It's been over 100 years that discrimination in Asian. And we just celebrated the first year anniversary of the Atlanta massacre. What have we learned from it? What is the aftermath of that? What are we doing about that now? In the Monterey Park, on the mental illness, we did a special on Chime TV. Most Asian, I'm talking about Filipinos because I would know more, they don't want to say they have mental illness. They don't even know that it's mental illness. They don't want to take that medicine. There's one person that will be joining Chime TV. He is now the ambassador of American Red Cross in the Philippines, because he's very, prominent man. When he had an attack, they have to put him in the OBGYN department, because nobody, they don't want him to see that they're going into the mental illness section of the hospital. And now he's not afraid anymore, because if I do not get treated, I will only go to sleep at 5 a.m. and when people are waking up. And now he's normal. So mental illness makes a big difference on this racism. But is there a study on Asian? Is there funding on mental illness in Asian? Maybe there is, but is it enough? When I would say Asian is, we all know that we're highest education, highest household. We're most of the time law-abiding citizen. I've never gotten a ticket since 1981 when I arrived in this country. I lived in an apartment with one bedroom. There are 3 of us. We get all our furniture, everything from the garage sale. I work at Kmart. I work at Mervyn's. I moved my way up. I did not watch television till I was 11 years old. And now I own a channel. I own a network. How is that possible? It's because this country, we come to this country because golden opportunity that anybody that's in the United States, if you work hard, if you educate yourself, you don't have to go to Ivy League. You don't have to be college educated. There's so many vocational courses out there. You can have a piece of America. And so this is why this is Chime TV. But Mimi, I am really, really happy to have this. And my company called Faith 7. It's not because my name is Faith. It's because media is one of the 7 platforms of God from the church education. So media is where we can have a balanced news, the truth, where we can show the, on my channel, as far as I'm still going to earn to run this, I'm not gonna have all those cussing words. I don't. I'm going to make sure that when they watch Chime TV, that they are informed, empowered, and inspired by the AAPI immigrant story. So I welcome all of us. This is not about me. It's never going to be me. I just created our own freeway, our own boulevard, where all of us media can showcase who we are. And it's the right place at the right time, from the Oscar nominee. We're gonna, I'm crossing my finger, we're gonna have a first Asian Best Actress. And someday I'm gonna win an Emmy Award. No, but I'm hopefully Debbie Sirsuksi can make that happen. But when I was interviewing Congressman Ted Lieu, he was saying his brother and him, when they see an Asian on television, they're so proud of it, right? Because there's not very many. The average of our faces in media is in the 2%. The buying media for Asian is 0.001%. It's because there's no initiative. So I thought I'm ready to retire, Bob. I'll be 63 pretty soon, but I intend to make sure that my children's children will have a platform to showcase our beautiful faces, our the way we entertain people, the way we show our love. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you, Faith. It's an inspiring story from working in Mervyn's and Kmart and working your way up. And I think that kind of segues into why Asians run into such problems at college campuses. And in many ways, they are being punished for their successes. People presume that you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth, not that you had to work your way up, that your parents sacrificed and all that for you to get an education. And that's part of the education that, as a TV channel owner, maybe you can put that message out. Certainly our art and entertainment world can cast them differently than, what was that other movie, Crazy Rich Americans or
Crazy Rich Asian?
Yeah, Crazy Rich Asians, stereotypes. Hit some truth in that, but stereotypes are often built on a nugget of truth. But how we focus on these things also shapes society. Thanks again, and stick around. We'll have some questions for you, I'm sure, at the end. Our next panelist is Carlos Benitez, who's an art dealer, collector, inventor, and entrepreneur. Carlos founded ACCA in 2012, bringing his knowledge to the art world at large, representing works from Jean-Michel Basquiat to the world's most valuable chess set by Colin Byrne. He developed a reputation for staging and developing on-site, off-site, and online quality art exhibitions of contemporary art from Los Angeles to Miami and China. Carlos, thank you so much for joining us. The microphone is yours.
Thank you, Bob, and I'm happy to be here in collaboration with all of you guys. Congratulations, May and Bob, such a great alliance you guys got going, and very helpful, in terms of awareness and also understanding, what you're doing. Just a few days ago, before I met you, I wasn't really sure about the issue, the problem, and the numbers are really scary. Yeah. So, thanks for bringing that up on the table. But as as an individual, I grew up in LA, in a very multicultural city. I went to schools that are very multicultural. So thank God for that. I always felt comfortable, being around the different groups, different nationalities, and, looking at, helping, the situation that we have. But, now as an adult, I continue to be in this multicultural environment with the arts. As you know, the arts has no boundaries, no limits. And, we always try to connect the art to different groups. So we're currently in partnership with AAHA Awards, which is a yearly program that celebrates the triumph of African Americans in Hollywood. So it's a great program that we participate every year. And currently, we are also participating with an African group which donates their time to restore people's lives by offering free surgeries to kids that are born with birth defects, or people that had terrible accidents that they need immediate surgeries. So that's another program that we are participating to continue that energy of being multicultural. And the latest work that we're working on, it's a global program for the arts, where we want to bring in arts in 15 different categories. And we sort of like looking into ways in legislation so we can amplify this works. As you know, there's a lot of platforms right now that they're all designed in policy, right, to combat these issues that we have, because we need to have these programs in place, and they're doing a very good job. But what we like to do and implement is policy to prevent. I think that if you look at all the problems that we had, a lot of it, they come from a foundation, and a lot of the foundation, it's connected to media, right, to speeches that you hear either on TV, on radio, or things that you see in movies. So I think that one of the things we want to work and we're working on is creating a policy to prevent, and those policies involve creating programs for writers. I think that everything we hear, everything we see starts right with someone writing a story, humanizing people the way they are, creating stories where when they see me, when they see you, they're not scared, but they understand why we are the way we are. And so I think that those programs could prevent these hate crimes that we're seeing. Obviously, artist programs are very important. We have one of our artists in the panel today, True, who would show her side of the story, which we love, which being very active in almost like recording the things that are going on, but in a way it's almost like her work's like a media, because she's documenting a lot of the things that we're talking about right now. So I hope that with this collaboration we can amplify what we're trying to do, which is be more multicultural, creating a platform that could be amplified by the media in terms of broadcasting. We sort of like creating a bill which would hopefully pass, where networks will give us a little bit of their time so we can put a lot of this art and talented people on such a platform. So thanks for inviting me and the artists to this platform, and I'll stay if you guys have any questions.
Great. Thank you, Carlos. Appreciate your comments. And you sort of underscored something else. It's not just what you're doing within your discipline, but you're taking your position as a community leader of having achieved some successes and giving back by identifying issues, focusing on those, finding ways to help reach out to those that haven't had the same opportunities or haven't made the same opportunities perhaps that you have. But thank you for your comments. And again, if we have time, we'll get to some questions a little later. So our final speaker, certainly not least, is Adrienne Truwala, known as True Love. Born in Kansas City, True was classically trained from an early age by her mother, who was an art teacher. At 18, True took her classical art training into her first creative job as a makeup artist. This path led her to LA, where her makeup career came to life. Working both on top models backstage at New York Fashion Week for Marc Jacobs, Alexander Wang, Philip Lim, and everyday women alike, True refined her skill and learned of her deep passion for making women feel beautiful. True's dream of merging her love for connection, art, and makeup seeded the inspiration for True Basics, an illustrated makeup tutorial book. In 2014, the lure of the art world pulled True back to the canvas and into the pop art world. Her first collection, Pop Life, was shown across the country alongside artists including Blake Leroux, Shepard Fairey, Ben Ayn, Risk, and Gregory Siff, and apologize for any butchering of names there. In 2017, True is captivated by the political upheaval of the time and joined Revolution LA, an activist group in Los Angeles. Through her participation, she opened her world to the pains of communities less fortunate and realized that her role as an artist extends beyond making simply beautiful art. She wanted to deepen her creations to have a lasting impact as well. True's experience and activism fused with her pop art techniques birthed the concept for Sugarcoated, an art meets community engagement platform whose mission is to raise awareness about serious social and political issues in a fun and approachable fashion. True, thank you so much for joining us today. The microphone is yours.
Thank you so much. Sir, first of all, I want to thank you for inviting me on the panel. This is clearly an issue that I'm extremely passionate about. And I wanted to really touch on some of the points that Carrie and Faith made. First of all, about education and how this is all about education. And my mom always said, speak about what you know. And what I know is I grew up in a very privileged, white, not very diverse area. And there was a lot of lack of history given to me in my education growing up. And when I got involved in activism and started working with Native American tribes and learning about their stories, I realized how uninformed I truly was. And it was a very rude awakening to find out that I was ignorant. And that was, that was like somebody dumping a bucket of ice water on me. And I had to come to terms with that and then learn how to work with this void of a narrative. So, one of the points that Carrie had made is that we have this tendency of othering, of, in the void of truth and education, we create stories in our minds. And this is really the power of story. We can either create story through entertainment and art, or we create stories in our minds. And I believe that hate is really originated from the stories we create about each other in our minds that are not based in truth. And the power of entertainment to override or rewrite these narratives is extraordinary. And the first time that I really saw the impact of entertainment, I was traveling in Australia in the middle of the outback in this small little house, and there on the table was an Us Weekly with all of our celebrities on it. And it just really hit me that entertainment has these tentacles that reach farther than politics will ever have reached to. And it was like, okay, so if you really want to have a major impact, you have to get into entertainment. So I want to give a shout out to Faith for creating a network that's going to, allow you to have the platform that you need to tell these stories that are missing in our cultural narratives. So with Sugar Coated, once again, only speaking to my own experience, I knew that there was a lot of people in my culture, which is, let's just call it privileged for lack of, a broader definition. How do I access, how do I share these stories that they don't have to read or they haven't been shared even exist? How do I reach the people who don't have to care? And so I wanted to use candy and sugar imagery to spotlight social and political truths of our time, because if you can't handle the truth, you got to sugarcoat it. So it was a really fun exhibit with neon wall sculptures of layered neon acrylic panels. And there was a description next to each one of them that really laid out the truth. I didn't want this to be an exhibit where you would interpret the truth. I wanted it to be in your face, bittersweet, if you will. And it was really impactful, but there was this bite to it. It, like I said, it was very bittersweet. And what I realized over time is what I put out in the world is a reflection of myself. And this relates back to hate crimes. How we treat other people is how we feel about ourselves. And I'll come back to that point in a minute. But most recently, I've developed a concept called What Would Love Say, which are the paintings behind me. And it'll be an expansive project that I really want to expand out into street art, so that we can start painting messages of love around our cities, so that our cities can be the sanctuaries that I think our souls are so desperately needing. Because ultimately, I think that hate originates from the experience of lack of belonging. And this ties right back into the mental health issue. And what, in my opinion, mental health is, or mental illness, I should say, really stems from a severe isolation complex. The feeling that you're alone, nobody understands you, you don't understand anyone else. So the only way that I can experience power is by having power over somebody else, and might as well be somebody who doesn't look like me. And I feel like that's how story can fill in this experience of non-inclusion. Because ultimately, I think that we live in a culture of powerlessness. We're perpetually told we're not beautiful enough, we're not, light enough, we're not blonde enough, we're not skinny enough, we're not smart enough, we're not rich enough. And so these stories all compile into this really intense emotional block that prevents us from feeling compassion for other people. And I think that it really prevents us from having compassion for ourselves. And ultimately, like I said before, how we treat other people is how we feel about ourselves. And that's why it all comes back to healing, really. But healing is such a new idea. It's a new idea that we have responsibility or the capability of, teaching ourselves how to see the world differently. I think, up until this point, it's been assumed that you'll adopt whatever your views of your parents and your culture are. And now there's this entire idea that we can change that and we can change the narrative and we don't have to do what our culture or our parents told us to do. And it's extraordinarily empowering, but it's also really overwhelming because what it takes to make those changes is to get in touch with our emotions. And we haven't really been a culture that's even honored or respected our emotions, even though we're extraordinarily emotional beings. So, and our stories are what bring us into these emotions that are hard to tap into otherwise. That was one of the things that Carrie had said. She said, we experience similarity through performance. And so one of the things that I'm working on, one of the projects I'm working on currently is called Lost Angels. And it's 3 street artists that are taking on a corrupt government by using art to motivate the people to organize and to see that while their symbols and sounds may be different, our cultures are different, we all love and heal the same. So how can we come together with this understanding that our emotional experiences are really quite similar? They go from fear to love and everything in between, and everyone is the same in that aspect. And if we can honor our similarities of our internal experiences, I think our external differences become less important.
Awesome. Well, you highlighted something as you were talking about growing up in a non-diverse culture in Kansas, was it? And moving to LA, where it's just the opposite. I mean, it forced you to open your eyes and see things, and you had a harder vision to do that. And you have imagine things on canvas to help portray different things. I think it's extremely important. I mean, science fiction talks about the future in reality mimics art. You got to visualize it for things to happen often. And so often it's in our arts world, whether it's science fiction or it's modern art or things like that. Appreciate your comments. We're running a little short of time, but May, you had some comments or anything to add today?
Let me unmute myself. Yes, just quickly. We each are a dot on a map. Okay, we are a center of influence in our own community. When we make enough, there are enough dots, we'll make a line. There are enough lines, we'll have network. So what we do is important, even though just ourselves. So what I'm trying to say is when we have a network, we have to have change agents. Now, who are the change agents that we envision in our endeavor to stop the spread of hate crimes? They are the students. So we started our student movement back in January. So we started in high school and also universities. So we have our first chapter set up in La Cañada, Flint Ridge. So so what we envision is for the students, not just to establish chapters in their own school. We would like for them to express themselves through arts, okay, film industry, photography, theater, whatever. So I think that is a very important, specific solutions that we are looking for. And I'm very appreciative that, for the arts and entertainment industry to speak up and hopefully working with the students currently in the future. So that's what we think that we should do, is to mobilize our society from hopefully early on to participate in this effort and get to know the different cultures and different people, different groups, so we can understand each other, and therefore, hopefully through this effort that we can reduce hate crimes. So that's the comment I would like to make. Thank you.
Thank you, May. Before you disappear, did you see any questions in our chat?
Yes, there is a question from Lauren for Carlos, I believe. Yes, Carlos.
Go ahead and read it.
Carlos, you grew up in LA and were educated in diverse schools. Did you feel that there was less hate, bullying, etc. in the schools back then and more unity, or is it hate and bullying just more publicized now in the age of everyone with a cell phone camera?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question because, when I grew up, social media was zero, right? So, maybe there's just things that, they're happening, but you're not aware of too. And you have to thank the media, sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes a bad thing. So, but, growing up, I wasn't exposed to that, and being in a multicultural environment, I never had that energy around me. And even now, as an adult, I grew up, I have a multicultural family, maybe for that same reason, because, in a way, we were not exposed to that growing up. But needless to say, May, I just want to say the program that you're doing with the students, that's exactly what I was relating to, because that's a really great way to prevent.
Thank you, Carlos. There's a follow-up question. Carlos, do you speak Spanish?
Yes, I do, very fluently. And I've been told that my accent's very unique because it doesn't feel like from most accents. So yo puedo hablar muy buen español, así es que puedo contestarles en español también.
Sounds great.
If anybody wants to interview Carlos, we'll have contact information that we'll send out to the people that attended today's event. I know somebody had asked me if I spoke Spanish earlier or through one of our staff, and I apologize, I don't. I learned a poquito, pero no mucho when I was young. So I apologize, we're out of time. I'd love to sit and ask all of you a lot of questions. An extraordinary panel today, and appreciate you participating and sharing with us your insightful responses. Overall, I think it's very clear that the arts and entertainment industry can use their influence to bring awareness of and help reduce hate incidents. The comments of today's speakers are timely and join a chorus of insights shared on this monthly briefing by other industry leaders seeking, as we do, to reduce the escalating incidents of hate. Brief update, you may recall that Senator Josh Newman introduced on our behalf Senate Concurrent Resolution 15, establishing January 28th as a Stand Against Hate Action Day in perpetuity. I'm pleased to announce that the resolution has now passed both houses with no opposition, and we thank Senator Newman for this leadership on this important issue, as it's a date that we can rally around every year and highlight ways to overcome hate and post them to our friends and social media and online. To our media friends, we'll be emailing you a link to today's program, as well as resources related to the program. You can also find valuable information on our website, actagainst.hate.org. We hope today's program provided useful data or fresh information you can share with your various audiences. This program was made possible with grant funding from the California State Library's Stop the Hate program. And please note that while we normally have our meetings the second Wednesday of each month, next month we have to kick it back a week to April 19th, the third Wednesday at 11 a.m. I apologize for any inconvenience that may cause. We will resume our normal schedule on the second Wednesday for our May briefing. Thank you all for attending. That concludes today's program.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Okay, it's a wrap.